everyone, I'm Karen Cooper from Dogs Don't Eat Pizza, and today I'm going to talk to you about how to breathe new life into old chairs. I've got two chairs here, a dining chair with an upholstered seat cushion and a solid wood chair, and I'm going to show you how to refinish them. So first you need to gather your supplies. Obviously you need the chairs. I got these at the Habitat for Humanity ReStore. This one was $19.95, this one was $12.95. You're going to need a drop cloth. I always make a mess when I DIY, and since I can't work outside today and make a mess out there because it's raining, I'm on my front porch, and so I put down a plastic drop cloth. You're going to need some rags. I have a wet rag that I'll use to wipe down any sanding dust that's created from sanding the chairs, which I'll talk about in a minute. And you need a dry rag to catch any paint drips or any other mishaps you might have. You need sandpaper. Now, if you are using a chalky finish paint, which I'll talk about in a minute, you can skip this step. But if you're using regular latex paint and your chairs have a shiny finish to them, you're gonna wanna sand them down before you paint it. You need to give the paint a good surface to adhere to. Use 220 grit sandpaper. You can buy this at any hardware store, and that will dull the shine and give the paint a good, nice surface to adhere to. You're going to need paint. Now, I love this project because often when I'm painting chairs, I use leftover paint I have. But if you don't have that and you're deciding what kind of paint to buy, you have some choices. You can use latex paint, regular latex paint that you can get in any big hardware store or small hardware store. But if you have a shiny finish like this, you're going to need to sand it down and prime it. Especially if it's a dark wood and you're going lighter with your paint color, you're going to want to prime it. You certainly have to sand it. But if you don't want to sand it or prime it, you can use a chalky finish paint. There are a number of brands of chalky finish paint, and you can even make... You're going to need a paintbrush. I like these little guys because they go really well around the curves and in the crevices of the chairs. They're very easy to control as well. So I really like these. You're going to need a screwdriver. So when you remove the cushion of the chair, you're going to do it with a screwdriver. You can also use a drill, but really a basic screwdriver is all you need. You're going to need fabric if you're using upholstered chairs. So for this upholstered chair, I've pulled a couple kinds of fabric. I've got a brightly colored yellow, green, and teal fabric, and I've also got a red Greek key fabric. And then you're going to need something to attach the fabric to the chair, so you're going to need a stapler. I have a regular staple gun, which works just fine, or you can use an electric stapler. I love my electric stapler. These are not very expensive. You can get them at any hardware store, and they take the heavy lifting out of stapling into wood. So there are your supplies. Let's get started. The first thing you're going to want to do on the dining chair, and let's start with this one, is take the cushion off. Now, to take the cushion off, all you do is flip it over, and you'll see there are 4 holes right here. Those are the screws that attach the cushion to the frame of the chair. What you're going to do is take your screwdriver and unscrew those screws, and the cushion will pop right off. So once you've removed the cushion, you'll notice here that the fabric is tucked under and there's just a piece of cardboard here. Now, there are 2 ways to go about recovering this cushion. The first thing you could do is actually take the cardboard off and take the fabric off. And especially if you have dark fabric like this, that might be the best option so it doesn't show through whatever fabric you're using. If you do that and you take the old fabric off, save it. Don't tear it. Take it off and then use it as a template to cut your fabric for the recovering the seat. If you decide to just cover over this, if you have a light colored fabric on the chair right now that you're recovering, or you're putting a dark fabric over a dark fabric, then you don't have to take it off. Just recover it and staple it right over it. Also, you want to deal with the chair frame while you have the cushion off. You want to give it a good cleaning, and as I said, if you're using latex paint, you want to give it a good sanding with your sandpaper and get that sheen off of it. Doesn't take much. You just have to go over it, get that shiny stuff right off. Give the paint a good surface to adhere to. Again, if you're using chalky finish paint, you don't need this step. If you're using latex paint, you do. Then wipe it down with your damp rag or your tack cloth. A tack cloth is a piece of gauzy fabric that has some sticky on it, and it will pick up all the dust as well. So just wipe that down and make sure you've got a good, clean finish before you start painting. Once you have your frame all cleaned up, the next thing we're going to do is paint it. That way, while the paint is drying, you can work on your cushion. So I'm going to start by using the chalky finish paint. Now the reason I'm using that is because I'm using such a bold red fabric, I don't want a glossy finish on the chair. Also, I really liked this blue color. The color's name is Legacy, with the red fabric. So I am going to use the chalky finish paint, but the application is essentially the same. Dip your brush in your paint. Don't get too much on it. Don't overload your brush, just enough to coat. And then go in the same direction as the wood. If you go opposite the grain of the wood, it's going to look funky and it won't cover as well. Okay? So again, if you're using latex paint, the application is actually exactly the same. You want to make sure you don't put too much paint on your brush, and then just do gentle brush strokes to cover. Now, if you're using a bright color like this, whether you're using latex or chalky finish, you're probably going to want to do 2 coats to give it a nice even finish, so you don't see the brush strokes or you don't see any imperfections that might have been in the wood before you started painting. So I'm just going to finish painting this chair, and then we'll come back and work on the cushion. So now I've finished painting the first coat of chalky finish paint on the chair, and I don't know if you can see it, but there definitely are some brush strokes showing that are going to need a second coat. So I'm going to put a second coat on, but I want to give you a tip about what you should do with your brush in between coats. If you want to use the same color and the same brush for the second coat, just put your brush either in a zip top bag or wrap it in saran wrap and stick it in the fridge. Believe it or not, it will stay fresh and the paint will stay wet as long as you only leave it there for about 24 to 48 hours. You should be okay. The chalky finish paint dries, and actually latex paint has a pretty quick drying time as well. Usually dries in about a couple of hours before you recoat it. Another note about chalky finish paint is because it has that very matte finish on it, and because it's made up of chalk, you want to put a protective coat on it, especially when you have a chair that's going to be used like in a dining room fairly frequently. So after you paint it, you want to either give it a good coat of wax, which you can buy where you buy the chalky finish paint, or polyurethane, which you can buy at any hardware store. I tend to prefer polyurethane just because it's easy to use and I always have it around. So with that said, I'm going to now start to work on the cushion while the paint dries. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is take the fabric off the cushion, the wood that created the cushion. Now, if you can see, there are approximately 10,000 staples in this. So I am just going to take a screwdriver and work it under the staple and pull the staple out. I'm going to do that for each of these million staples because I don't want to tear the fabric. I want to use the fabric as a size template for cutting the new fabric. So I'm going to go do that. I'm not going to subject you to that. So I'll be right back. Okay, so we uncovered the cushion, and what did we find but more fabric? So I'm just going to leave this fabric there because the foam underneath it is in good shape, so I just want to leave it there. I've cut our fabric in the shape of the cushion by the template. That gives me plenty of room to fold it over and staple it with a clean edge. So what I'm going to do is fold the fabric over to the back of the cushion. So the cushion is upside down on the table, on top of the fabric. Make sure you get it where the pattern is in the position you want, so it's not crooked or sideways. And then fold it over, pull it really tight because you don't want any wrinkles or gaps. Pull it really tight, take your stapler and staple it down. You're going to do this all the way around. Now, when you do the corners, you want to do the corners kind of like how you wrap a present. You want to make sure they're nice and tight. So don't just fold it over and then you have this gap here. Fold each side in and then fold the corner down. That then creates a nice clean side that will fit back into the chair frame, and then you can staple it. Do this all the way around, and then you'll have a nice, soft, clean, new cushion. So now I've stapled the fabric all the way around, as you can see, and I've pulled it nice and tight so that we have a nice, flat, smooth finish on the front with no wrinkles or anything. There are a few fuzzes, but I'm getting them off. Then if you have any extra fabric, like if you cut the template a little bigger, which I tend to do because it's easier to have it be bigger and then cut it down than have it be too small and have to start over. So if you have extra, just along your staple line, just take some scissors and trim the extra off. And then that way it won't be bulky when you try to fit it back in the frame. So I'm just going to trim this extra little bit off. With just regular craft scissors. And then we've got a nice smooth cushion for our chair. And as soon as the paint's dry, we can put it back on. One thing to keep in mind is that the screws are going to have to go back through the bottom of the cushion. So if you've got a bunch of fabric there, you might want to trim it down just so those screws can get right back through it. Okay, so as you can see, I have painted the chair and I've recovered the cushion. After you paint the chair, you're going to want to put a protective finish on it because these are going to be dining chairs. They're going to need to stand up to a lot of use. So you have a couple of options. The first thing I want to talk about is if you're going for a sleek look, you want to just go ahead and finish it. But if you're looking for more of that shabby chic look, you want to take a piece of sandpaper and just sand down a little bit of the paint so that the wood shows through. Then you put your protective finish on it. But if you want more of a clean, sleek look, which is more my style, admittedly, just put a protective finish on it. So either add some finishing wax, which you can get at craft stores or hardware stores, and you buff that on with either a brush or a clean cloth, or you can use polyurethane. I typically use polyurethane just because I generally have it around. One thing to note about polyurethane is don't shake it. Before you use polyurethane, stir it. You do not shake polyurethane. So once you've done that, it's time to reattach the cushion. Okay, so now I'm ready to reattach the chair cushion to the chair. Now, for me, the easiest way to do this, because I only have two hands, is to hold the cushion in place against the chair when the chair is right side up, and then flip it over onto a flat surface. That way, you know it's in the right position, but you've got the surface to help you out. Then all you have to do, take the screws that you took out before, put them back in the holes, and either using a screwdriver or a drill, drill it back in. I'm going to use the drill just because it's easier, but a screwdriver works just as well. And just like that, I'm going to do the 4 screws, and our chair will be ready. So once I've screwed the screws in, you can see it's securely attached to the chair. And now I've got a brand new chair out of a $20 ReStore find. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, you can find me at dogsdon'teatpizza.com.